I mean, all the reasons not to do it, number one, it's a depreciating asset historically.
Right.
I mean, this thing's not going to be worth $3 million next year. It's going to be worth less. The more you use it, the more it'll depreciate. And now you're putting it in a mechanism where you want to use it as much as possible. Wait a minute. Look, you can't make a decision now. It's impossible. You don't have enough information. But it's my job to get you that information. It's my job to give you the data that you need to make an informed decision, both from a business perspective and from a personal perspective. If we're looking from a $2 to $5 million budget, we're looking at mid-size jets because of the range on them, because of the cabin size, and because of the ability of a charter company to charter it out at a competitive rate so that everybody's making money. If we go to the light jets, you can get something newer, maybe something a little nicer, but the margins aren't there. If you're going to the heavy jets, now we're big bucks, and the margins aren't quite there. Mid-size are a good sweet spot. Within the mid-size, in that $2 to $5 million range, let's take a look at some of the makes and models that we're going to be looking at. For me, in terms of reliability, in terms of their name, in terms of their reputation, I like the Citations. I'm just kind of a Textron guy. I like the Cessna Citations, the Citation line, whether it's an XL, XLS, XLS Plus, maybe a Sovereign in there. Even though it's a little bit bigger. I like they're kind of like the Apple, if you will. I don't know if you're a tech guy or not, but even just from a phone, like they just work. They're just kind of an industry standard. Now you're going to pay a premium for that. So they're going to be probably, yeah, exactly. Right. So you're going to pay a premium for that product. So let's say, we're looking at like $4 million, roughly XL, XLS, $4 million. From there, we take I don't want to say a step down, but another move could be your Hawkers, which is great for charter companies. They are big bodied. They perform better than the Citations. They're going to have more range. They're going to have a bigger body, so the cabin's going to feel bigger, more luxurious. And they have a fantastic maintenance schedule that suits charter. So they're workhorses. You can run them hard. They can generate good revenue for you on the charter side. The problem is, they've kind of been picked over right now in the market, so finding one can be a challenge. But again, the acquisition cost isn't going to quite be as much. Then at the same time, we're talking for the Hawkers, we're talking, $2.5 to $3.5, $4 million, depending on how new of a Hawker you want to get. But the Citations, 3.5. Like just wrap your head around 3.5, 4.5. Hawkers. 3 to 3.5 for a decent one. So now if we want to talk speed, we start looking at the Lears. They're kind of, I want to say up and coming because obviously they're old. Like all these are older, right? But, if we're not going to get a Hawker because they're picked over, we're not going to get a Citation because I don't want to pay the premium for a mid-sized jet. Let's take a look at the Lear 60s. Fast, great cabin size, but now we start to bump up against how readily available they are in the market, although they're more available than most right now. We're going to bump up into downtime. What's their dispatch percentage? Are they reliable? And if they break down, do we have parts availability? Do we have pilot availability? As we're kind of going through these different makes and models, these questions become more and more, apparent. And so, yes, you can get into a Lear 60. There's one off market right now, I think is $2 million or low twos.
Right.
A decent one we can also get on programs, 2.5, 2.8. So now we're kind of, below that $3 million threshold. But you have to ask, are we going to have the pilot availability? Are we going to have the parts availability? And then if we want to get a little bit older, now we start looking at the Falcons, Falcon 50s, $2 million. $3 million range, that's kind of what we're talking about. And it all really comes down to this idea of who's your business partner. Because there are guys making money on Citations, there's guys making money on Falcon 50s, there's operators making money for everything in between. I mean, you can make money on a Vision jet if you have the right operator. I appreciate you checking out this video. Before I continue, I want you to go to theultimatejetguide.com where I've put together a full guide for jet buyers like yourself. And so that's where I come in to introduce you to different operators. And just so you know, the process, kind of how it, if you know how it looks. So you and I talk. I help you wrap your head around this idea of what it looks like. And then we say, okay, I want to learn more. Let's go talk to some operators. So then I introduce you to a couple of operators that I work with, and they're all in these different markets. You'll talk to a Citation guy, a Falcon guy, a Lear and a Hawker guy. Figure out which business partner makes sense for you, have 2-3 conversations with them. And then at that point in time, I'm going to turn around. I'm going to say to you, hey, Kevin, like, is this still the play that you want to do? Is this the move you want to go? And if you're like, yes, I like what I heard, I'm going to pick, operator B. Great. Here's my agreement. Okay, it's a $100,000 acquisition fee. It's 5% down.
Yeah.
So you put me on retainer, and now I work in collaboration with the operator that you chose. We go find a jet. They're going to get a piece of that commission. We go find the jet. They will do the pre-buy for you and do their due diligence to make sure it's a good fit for their business as well.
The operator will do that?
Yep.
The acquisition?
Yep. Myself and the operator will collaborate in that whole process. We'll negotiate the purchase price. We'll go through the pre-buy. We'll negotiate fixing the squawks, and then we close. And that's when the rest of my commission is due. And then you'll need a couple weeks for them to put it on the certificate, go through some testing that they need to do. And so right now you're at the perfect time. Right here as we sit in June, I mean, we're looking at, if you signed up, let's say you signed up, tomorrow, we're probably, let's say 30 days, 60 days to find an operator that you like to work with. Another 30 to 60 to find the right aircraft. Another 30 to 60 to do the pre-buy and negotiate. And then another, 30 to 45 for the conformity. So you're right now in the sweet spot to start the process so that by the time we get to the fourth quarter, depending on the jet that you want to get, we could be operational. So now you've got your write-off and you're starting to generate income.
So you said, like, for your commission, like $100,000 retainer. Just go over that one more time real quick.
When we get started, you and I are just going to talk. Text me whatever questions you have. Then I'm going to introduce you to the operators. There's no money down, no commitment right now. We're going to have conversations with the operators no matter what. You're going to talk to them. Yeah. And then when you decide this is definitely the move you want to do, then that's when I'll present you with the acquisition. It's $100,000 for the acquisition.
Okay.
That gets split between me and the operator.
Okay.
And with that, it includes all of the services of finding you an aircraft, calling both on the market and off the market stuff. It includes negotiating the price. It includes the documents, the purchase agreement, the letter of intent, all that stuff. It includes opening escrow, making sure all the documents are filed appropriately. It includes the pre-buy. Okay. The operator will, include the pre-buy costs. It may not include some travel stuff. It kind of, there's some travel stuff if we're going somewhere, but, we take it all the way until you take delivery of the aircraft.
Okay.
Yeah, so I was just talking to somebody. We had a conversation with another operator, and they were talking about, pre-COVID, 2018, 2019 levels. That market was not as strong as it is right now, and that market was still a viable market for someone to have their aircraft on charter and offset their costs.
Okay.
I believe that the operators that I work with have been in business long enough and understand their place in the market that I feel comfortable introducing you to them because they're not fly by night. They're not just starting out. They have a proven track record, and barring anything crazy, there's reasonable, they'll put the proposal in front of you. We have the paperwork. And there's reason to believe it should offset the cost. Now, if the market tanks and nobody wants to fly, well, that's one thing. If your aircraft hits a bird and requires 2 windshields, and those windshields are on back order for 6 months, and this is a real example, of one of the operators, well, now you're 6 months out of income. But barring that sort of thing, it would be reasonable for an owner to purchase an aircraft in order to offset their tax liability, lease it back to the charter company, let them manage it, let them take care of it, let them offset your fixed costs. And as long as your travel schedule is such that you can give them, a couple weeks notice, 2 weeks notice or more, with the occasional, hey, is anyone using the plane this weekend? I want to go to Miami with my buddies. With the occasional one of those. You're in the beginning of discovering if it's the right move for you. But I can tell you it is a reasonable thing to be entertaining for sure.
How do these charter companies, they have a fleet of 25 planes? Are they mostly all this kind of situation where someone owns the plane and charters them out, or they generally own their own planes?
It's a mix. It's a mixed bag. A lot. Once they get to that big, they're probably owning some of their own planes. The operators that I want to introduce you to, I think the biggest one has 30, but they're kind of newer. The other two, one has 4, one has 6, and I think one has 9.
Okay.
So that's the reason I like them is because you're talking with the owner of the company. You're not talking to the director of maintenance or the director of the flight department, who the owner doesn't know who you are. And these are, borderline like mom and pop operations. I mean, they're out of the mom and pop stage, and they're in the growth stage. So they're operators that are still hungry, but they have the experience to guide you down the right path, and they're very, very easy to talk to. And will be they have the heart of a guide more so than a business person where it's this is how it's going to go. And you're going to buy this plane for this much. And this is what it's going to happen. No, that's not how they operate. And that's why we work well together.
Wouldn't a kind of older, more established company have more clients for bookings and stuff like that though? Or?
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely a possibility. If you wanted, to go with one of the top charter companies in the world, I can make that introduction as well. What some people will find is they miss the personal touch on that. But I will tell you, right now, the operators that I work with, they are farming out requests. So what I mean by that is they have too much demand to where they are reaching out to other operators for an off-fleet solution to the demand that they have. So no one has really expressed to me anyway a negativity in terms of the demand. The demand is still strong, and it's not a question of, for these guys anyway, if their marketing is good enough for their business model, it seems to be sufficient. I'll tell you, I have one operator, actually he's a good guy in Scottsdale, that he is showing based on his model. You buy the so they buy the aircraft, and when we're targeting the aircraft, we're targeting aircraft that are below market value. So it's not like we're just going to saddle you with any aircraft, right? We want to make sure it's a good market value, because part of their business model is these planes don't fly on charter forever. So the way that it would work is you buy an aircraft below market value, you fly it, and then in 3 to 5 years, we're going to go and sell it. And so based on the charter revenue and the recapture, he has been tracking, 3, 4, 5, 6% ROI for his clients based on his model. So it doesn't have to be a loss leader per se, especially because, like you said, you're putting it to work. So for me to go, because I was just looking this up today, Las Vegas to Sarasota, it's a 4-hour trip in a midsize. It's like $30,000 one way. So I look at that and I say, okay, if you're thinking 40 hours, that's 10 trips, that's 5 round trips, right? So we're looking at 5 round trips times $30,000. Now here we are at $150,000 for the year for you to make that trip. and Las Vegas to, Sarasota. I mean, it's almost across the country, right? So would you rather spend 150 grand a year and mark it off as business travel, or would you rather spend 4 million, offset the costs, and fly for free? If you could, offset that cost.
Yeah.
Again, if it helps you tax wise, that big, that $3.9 million jump, great, off you go. If you like private jets and you like owning something, great, let's go. But if it's, I guess what I'm telling you is you can charter jets and spend maybe 250 grand a year. Definitely not $500,000 a year. And if it's for business, still write it off. Do you need to spend $3 to $4 million to achieve that write-off goal? That's a question for yourself.
Yep.
But some guys like it, they're savvy business guys. They like the risk, the reward. They like owning something tangible. And there's in between too. If you don't want to charter, you do want to own, you do want that write-off, then go fractional. We can introduce you to our guy in Scottsdale that will sell you a 1/6 share. You get 19 days of travel, unlimited. Still get the write-off for owning a 1/6. You're paying, I think, maybe 3 or 4 or 5 grand maybe an hour, as opposed to $8 grand an hour, and you're offsetting your income because other people that are using it, they're paying into it as well. The reason I hesitate to say, like, hey, if you're paying $3 million in taxes, you should buy a jet, is because the other variables of your risk tolerance. I mean, all the reasons not to do it. Number one, it's a depreciating asset historically.
Right.
I mean, this thing's not going to be worth $3 million next year. It's going to be worth less. The more you use it, the more it'll depreciate. And now you're putting it in a mechanism where you want to use it as much as possible. Wait a minute.
Yeah, I know.
It's a mobile asset. You give it to somebody, who knows where it's going to go and who's going to take care of it and how they're going to take care of it. The acquisition costs are high to get into this thing for an investment vehicle. Like, we're talking $3-4 million. So if despite all of that, it still sounds like a good idea, that's where I invite you. Let's talk with the operator. Look, you can't make a decision now. It's impossible. You don't have enough information. But it's my job to get you that information. It's my job to give you the data that you need to make an informed decision, both from a business perspective and from a personal perspective. It's a big chunk to bite off in the beginning.
Yeah.
Now, like I said, I'll tell you, I think definitely look at the jet guide. I can tell you, definitely you're roughly $55,000 to charter to Chicago. I think that's, I think if you're, and I don't want to say serious, but I just don't have a word right now, but if you're serious about looking into it, you have to experience it for yourself, because it's not going to make sense on paper at all. It's a vibe. It's an experience. It's a mindset. Because at the end of the day, the individuals that are flying private, they're not nickel and diming their time.
Yeah, I know.
It's like, I need to go from point A to point B, and this is how I'm choosing to go there, and I'm leaning into it 100%. I mean, if you think about it from a business perspective, I mean, I mean, that's a big, like I said, I don't know if I told you that, like, it's a big business tool. Like, you're getting from point A to point B for a meeting. Okay, now you don't have to go through it. Even content-wise. I mean, I don't know how I imagine you guys are doing, social media content. I mean, that's a big jump in your social collateral.
Right.
And so you lean into it. Like, it's not going to make sense on paper. At the end of the day, no way, no chance. This makes no sense on paper. But that's why you lean into it. And so then it begins to transform not just your experience, but it transforms your mindset, it transforms your business, it transforms your entire way that you look at the world. and how you're conducting business because you now have this tool,
Right.
because you have this asset.
Right.
And we can get you into an asset for $3-4 million, but we could also get you into a $3-4 million asset in a chunk, in a fraction.
Right. Yeah. That's good. Like I said, let me go through that stuff like this weekend and stuff, and kind of think where I'm at. But like I said, maybe that fractional ownership, like you mentioned, might be like where I'm at, and it's just like a straight up. I know this is what I'm going to spend every year and what I'm going to get.
And it's not forever. It's seasonal. Like really, like you're in the beginning season. Like start it with a fractional. Start with a flight. Like,
Yeah.
Start there. Start with a flight, and then if you want to dip your toe in the water, let's go fractional. You can always, depending on the operator, there's different exit strategies there. You could be locked in for 5 years, but then at the same time, if it's doing well, you just go buy a jet, and then that's what people do sometimes is they'll buy it because they're not using it much and they give it to the charter company.
Right.
And then they find they're actually using it. They're generating some revenue. Well, then they go buy another one. So that one just sits and produces revenue, and then that starts to pay for the second one. And then you use the second one for your travel. Like that's not unheard of. So you can have a fractional to start with and then keep the fractional because you like it and you're in it, and then go buy a jet and make money there.
Yeah, right.
So it's not. We're in a season. We're going to take one step at a time. There's no rush.
Yeah.
You've got all the resources at your fingertips, and I look forward to working with you.